There are archaeological discoveries that make us pause, not because they lack explanations, but because the explanations force us to rethink the very idea of progress. Beneath desert sands and deep ocean floors, history sometimes reveals structures that seem to belong to a technological age far ahead of their time. From the intricate gear system of the Antikythera mechanism, an astronomical calculating device over 2,000 years old, to the so-called ancient Titanic, the Antikythera shipwreck, which concealed both treasure and knowledge beneath the Mediterranean Sea. Then there is the early Roman threshing machine, reflecting a primitive form of mechanized thinking, and the golden models of the Quimbaya artifacts, whose shapes resemble modern aircraft. Are these merely coincidences, or could they be evidence that human intelligence once reached heights that were later forgotten? In this video, we will explore the boundary between science and mystery, where the past is far more complex than we once believed. If you enjoy stories that make history feel alive and filled with questions, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next mystery. The 2,000-year-old radar machine, Antikythera mechanism. In the spring of 1901, beneath the deep blue waters off the Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers stumbled upon the wreck of an ancient ship. Among shattered bronze statues and pottery encrusted with sea growth, they recovered a corroded lump of metal, something that looked no different from scrap, crushed and forgotten by time. No one could have imagined that this misshapen object would become one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. As researchers began carefully removing layers of corrosion, tiny gear teeth slowly emerged, then another gear, then more engraved dials marked with delicate symbols. Inside that mass of oxidized bronze lay an intricate mechanical system, more than 30 interlocking gears, meshing together with astonishing precision. It was not jewelry, not a weapon, not a religious idol. It was a machine. After decades of X-rays and analysis, scientists determined that the device dates back to the 2nd century BCE. Its function? To calculate and predict astronomical phenomena, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, the cycles of the moon, even the relative positions of the known planets of the time. Pause and imagine that, in a world without electricity, without engines, without silicon microchips, humans built a device capable of mechanically simulating the movements of the heavens. Each rotating gear represented a cosmic cycle. Each engraved dial marked a slice of time. Many call it the first mechanical computer in human history, and when you look at its layered arrangement of gears stacked upon one another, it is hard not to think of the circuitry inside a modern device. Place it beside an early radar system, and the comparison becomes even more striking. Radar detects and predicts the movement of objects in space. This machine did something similar, except it tracked celestial bodies. Both transform the invisible into readable data. But what makes the Antikythera mechanism truly extraordinary is not only its engineering, it is the thinking behind it. To create such a device, ancient scholars had to understand astronomical cycles with remarkable accuracy. They had to translate the abstract motion of the sky into precise mechanical ratios. They had to imagine the universe as a system that could be programmed with gears. The metaphor here is not that the ancient Greeks possessed radar technology. They did not have electromagnetic waves. They did not have glowing screens, but they had a kind of intellectual radar. They scanned the sky with mathematics. They measured time through mechanical motion. They transformed the chaos of the cosmos into a predictable system. And perhaps the most haunting question is this, that knowledge appears to have vanished for more than a millennium afterward. No equally complex device has been found again until the medieval period. How could a civilization capable of creating something so sophisticated allow it to sink into obscurity? Maybe the answer does not lie beneath the waters of the Mediterranean. Maybe it lies in the way history itself unfolds. Progress does not always move in a straight line. Sometimes it is a series of brilliant peaks, followed by long stretches of silence. That machine resting motionless within a shipwreck for 2,000 years feels like a message sent forward in time. A reminder that human beings, in any era, have always longed to understand the sky. And sometimes, with nothing more than gears and intellect, they came closer to the universe than we ever imagined. Ancient airplanes, Quimbaya artifacts. Amid the lush green hills of Colombia, inside ancient tombs belonging to the Quimbaya culture that flourished more than 1,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered small yet deeply mysterious gold artifacts. They are no larger than the palm of a hand. They have no engines, no visible cockpits, and yet their shape makes many people pause. A slender body resembling the fuselage of an aircraft, triangular wings similar to modern delta designs, a vertical tail fin rising at the rear, a feature rare in birds or fish, but familiar in 20th century aviation engineering. At first, these objects were classified as jewelry or ritual items, possibly representing sacred animals. However, when viewed through the lens of aerodynamic engineering, the geometric similarities become striking. In the 1990s, several researchers and aeronautical engineers enlarged one of these models, carefully preserving its proportions. They added a small engine and radio controls. The result? The model was able to fly stably. This immediately fueled bold speculation. Did ancient South American civilizations understand the principles of flight? Had they observed something in the sky that we do not know about? But science, as always, remains cautious. There is no archaeological evidence that the Quimbaya culture possessed flight technology. No remains of runways, no tools for building engines, no written records describing flying machines. These golden objects were found in ceremonial and burial contexts, consistent with the culture's renowned tradition of intricate gold craftsmanship. The more widely accepted explanation suggests that they may be stylized representations of flying fish, insects, or mythical creatures. Ancient art does not always replicate nature with precision. It exaggerates, simplifies, and symbolizes. And it is precisely at this intersection between symbolism and engineering that the mystery emerges. Because even if it is coincidence, it is a remarkable one. Modern aerodynamic principles show that triangular wings and vertical stabilizers are effective configurations for flight stability. These details are not arbitrary in aircraft design. So why do they appear in artifacts over 1,000 years old? Perhaps the answer is simple. Such shapes also exist in nature. Fish have triangular fins. Insects have elongated bodies. Artisans may have been modeling the world around them. But perhaps there is a deeper layer, not about technology, but about imagination. Since ancient times, humans have looked up at the sky, birds crossing valleys, insects gliding through sunlight. The sky has always symbolized freedom, divinity, transcendence beyond the limits of the earth. Maybe the Quimbaya artisans were not crafting airplanes, they were crafting dreams. A dream of escaping gravity, a dream of touching the sky. The metaphor here is subtle. When modern engineers recreated the model and made it fly, it did not prove that ancient people possessed aviation technology. It proved that a shape aerodynamically sound enough can emerge from natural observation and artistic intuition. And what does that tell us? That human intelligence, in any era, has the ability to recognize hidden principles in nature. Even without Bernoulli's equations or wind tunnels, they observed, generalized, and shaped. These golden airplanes then become a mirror. They are not evidence of extraterrestrial technology, nor are they remnants of a lost super-civilization. They are proof of something simpler yet profound. Ideas often appear long before technology can realize them. Thousands of years before jet engines roared across the sky, the form of flight may already have existed in human imagination. And when we look at these artifacts today, the sense of wonder does not come from the past outpacing the present. It comes from the realization that the desire to fly, the desire to transcend limits, has always been part of what it means to be human. And sometimes, a small piece of gold jewelry can remind us that the dream began long before we ever truly took off. The ancient Titanic and the mystery beneath the sea, Antikythera shipwreck. Long before the world came to know the ill-fated ship called RMS Titanic, the Mediterranean had preserved an ancient Titanic of its own. In 1900, off the coast of the island of Antikythera, sponge divers seeking shelter from a storm accidentally discovered the wreck of a Roman ship. lying more than 40 meters beneath the surface. When they descended, they did not find only decaying wood and broken anchors. They encountered an entire graveyard of the past. Bronze statues, marble sculptures, pottery, coins, and precious cargo scattered across the seabed. The ship is believed to have sunk around the 1st century BCE, possibly while transporting war spoils or works of art from Greece to Rome. Given the scale and value of its cargo, many researchers have called it the Titanic of the ancient world. But what makes this wreck truly mysterious is not just its wealth. It was here, among debris eroded by time and saltwater, that archaeologists discovered a corroded object, later identified as the Antikythera mechanism. In other words, this ancient Titanic did not merely carry statues and treasure. It carried the intellect of a civilization. Imagine the moment the ship met its fate. Towering waves, violent winds, sailors in panic, then everything sinking into the depths, carrying secrets that humanity would not rediscover for nearly 2,000 years. The metaphor is powerful. The ocean does not only swallow wood and metal, it can bury knowledge itself. Had that ship never sunk, perhaps the mechanical device on board would have been used, copied, refined. Perhaps the trajectory of technological history might have shifted. Instead, it rested silently beneath layers of sand and coral, like a sealed message addressed to the future. When modern scientists returned to survey the wreck using submersible robots and 3D scanning technology, they realized the site had not revealed all its secrets. Each expedition opens the possibility that more artifacts remain undiscovered, other fragments of the past waiting to be decoded. The ship is like a doorway through time. It reminds us that beneath the calm surface of the present, entire chapters of history may lie untold. And sometimes, a single storm 2 millennia ago is enough to alter the course of human knowledge. The ancient Titanic is not merely a shipwreck. It is evidence that the past was more complex, more sophisticated, and richer than we often imagine, and that the sea still holds questions science has only just begun to touch. The Roman grain harvesting machine, Vallus. When we think of the Roman Empire, we often picture stone-paved roads stretching for thousands of kilometers, massive arenas like the Colosseum, or legions conquering half of the ancient world. But few people realize that, among the golden fields shimmering under the Mediterranean sun, the Romans once experimented with something remarkably close to a mechanized harvester. In the writings of ancient Roman authors such as Pliny the Elder, there is mention of a device called the Vallus, a grain harvesting machine used in the region of Gaul, modern-day France. Not a sickle, not human hands alone, but a large wooden structure fitted at the front with teeth or metal prongs. Imagine the scene. A heavy wooden cart pulled by oxen or mules. At its front, a row of metal teeth protruding like a giant comb. As the machine moved through the field, these teeth would strip the grain heads from the stalks, causing the kernels to fall into a collection box behind. The remaining straw was left standing in the field. Does the principle sound familiar? It forms the basic concept behind the modern combine harvester, except today, we use diesel engines, hydraulic systems, and enclosed cabins. More than 2,000 years ago, the Romans relied on animal power and simple mechanical design. This changes the way we see ancient agriculture. We often imagine farmers bent for hours under the sun, cutting grain bundle by bundle with a sickle, and indeed, that was the reality for much of history. But the existence of the Vallus suggests that, at least in certain regions, people were already thinking in terms of mechanization, seeking ways to reduce labor, increase efficiency, and optimize productivity. This was not merely a farming tool. It was systems thinking. To create the Vallus, its designers had to study the structure of grain stalks, understand the point at which the kernels detach, and determine the correct angle of the metal teeth to minimize loss. They had to consider the speed of the draft animals, the height of the crops, and the most efficient method of collection. That is engineering. That is experimentation. That is innovation. Archaeology has preserved few complete examples of this machine, Most of our knowledge comes from textual descriptions and a handful of stone reliefs. Yet those records make one thing clear. The Romans were not only builders of cities, they were also attempting to mechanize the countryside. So why do we rarely hear about this? Perhaps because the story of the 18th century Industrial Revolution is so dominant. When steam engines emerged in Britain, when factories rose and machines replaced manual labor, history was framed as though mechanical thinking began there. But the Valus proves that the seed of that idea had been planted millennia earlier. Perhaps it did not spread widely. Perhaps it was not efficient enough to transform the entire economy. Perhaps the cost of construction outweighed the benefits. And as the Roman Empire declined, such tools may have quietly disappeared from mainstream use. The metaphor is clear. History is not a straight line from primitive to modern. It is more like a night sky where stars flare brightly and then fade. Some ideas appear too early, before their time is ready. Some inventions are forgotten not because they lack value, but because circumstances do not allow them to flourish. The Valus is like a small beam of light in the darkness of the past. It reminds us that in every era, humans have sought to ease the burden of labor, that the desire to improve is not a modern invention, it is instinct. And when we watch a massive combine harvester rumbling across a field today, perhaps somewhere within the roar of its engine echoes the quiet roll of an ancient wooden cart moving through the fields of Gaul more than 2,000 years ago. Not because the Romans possessed futuristic technology, but because they, like us, were always searching for ways to make the world work more efficiently. And sometimes, it is precisely these seemingly modest inventions that offer the clearest proof that human intelligence was never as primitive as we once imagined. Conclusion: the mystery is not in the technology. There is no evidence that ancient people possessed radar systems, combine harvesters, or jet aircraft as we know them today. Nor is there proof that they held futuristic technologies far beyond their time. But there is very clear evidence that they understood astronomy with astonishing precision as demonstrated by the Antikythera mechanism. They left behind an ancient Titanic, the Antikythera shipwreck, a sunken vessel that carried not only cargo but knowledge buried for 2 millennia. They mechanized agriculture with early devices built upon systematic thinking. And they created forms and structures that still surprise modern observers with their striking similarities to contemporary designs. What is remarkable is not the idea of aliens or supernatural technology. What is remarkable is human intelligence. In every era, people have observed, reasoned, experimented, and dreamed of surpassing their limits. History is not a straight line of constant ascent. It moves in cycles, brilliant peaks, that sometimes fade quietly into silence, like a ship resting on the ocean floor. And a brief note, some of the visual illustrations in this video are recreated using modern AI technology to help us better imagine ancient contexts and structures. However, the core stories and discoveries presented are grounded in archaeological research and scientific documentation. Perhaps what we call modern today is simply another chapter in the long cycle of human ingenuity.